color analyst for the Toronto Raptors. Jack, thanks so much for making time to join us today.
Paul, my pleasure. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in Indianapolis, game tonight, so busy day, but happy to be joining you.
You know, Jack, success is so fickle in the NBA. When you look at what the Pacers had built, how they built it, the patience they showed, what they were able to accomplish last year, only to have Tyrese go out with his Achilles, Miles Turner goes away, and all of a sudden they're 1-11.
Yeah, it's a fragile business, and what the great Lou Conaseca used to say: "Peacock today, feather duster tomorrow." And it's a tough racket, and a big part of it is staying healthy. And when you have opportunities, you got to seize them. And I thought they had a phenomenal season last year, and they have a great organization, and they do things right here in Indiana. And for them right now, they're going through a tough stretch. They do have all their picks, and they have a lot of good young talent. And this will be a really good draft. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up. This could end up being a one step backwards to go two step forward in the future. So, if you get this nucleus of guys healthy again, and you do well in the draft, things could look up real quick.
Jack, we're of course going to dissect the Raptors. I've been, I think a lot of people I've talked to have been looking forward to our conversation because the Raptors are off to a real nice start, and there's lots of hope in the Raptors fan ranks right now. But I do want to talk about something that you just mentioned, which is organization. Do you think that one of the net impacts that the OKC Thunder have had on the rest of the league, and I think their impact has been in a wide range of areas, but one of them is the way their organization has gone about building their team. Is that a fair observation, or am I overstating that?
No, I think there's a lot of everybody's a copycat.
Right.
All said and done. And, so you're always going to take things from particularly organizations that run things at a high level consistently. And you could do that in any sport and say, I have to add some of those attributes to my team. And I think one of the things, that they do really well is obviously they dominate the game on both ends. They're not just a good offensive team, but they're a very capable defensive team. And particularly when they're fully healthy. So, so you learn from that. You say, hey, can I create some opportunities for my offense through my defense? And I think the Raptors went into the season this year trying to do a lot of that. And, things look different when you get into the regular season. And I think they've dialed back their pressure now because in many cases they don't have the personnel to execute that. When there's certain personnel on the floor, they can play that way. When there's not, then you got to play a little differently. So I give Coach Darko a lot of credit for just adjusting on the fly based upon the personnel that he has, and in game as well as from game to game.
Well, and in talking about the Raptors making their adjustments, I totally agree with you. I'm going to make a reference back to the Thunder and then bring it back to the Raptors. And my observation is with the Thunder, they've done, I think, as good a job as any organization that I've seen in recent memory at identifying what their strengths are and playing to those strengths and building their whole system around their strengths. Whereas as you mentioned correctly, Jack, it is a copycat league. And when one team plays a certain way, like when Golden State was playing, small ball and shooting the ball the way that they were, a lot of teams, started to try to go to high volume 3-point shooting, and they just probably most likely, and in fact, in cases easily identified that they didn't have the talent to do that, but they've tried to do it anyway. And I think the roadside is filled with white crosses of fired coaches who tried to play a certain way without the talent to play that particular way. Now, you mentioned Coach Darko and his adapting to the talent. I think that's been a part of the magic of this early season for the Raptors so far. They're playing faster pace, playing to their talent, but also the culture of unselfishness thus far seems really to be something that everybody's bought into.
Yeah, no, he's done a great job connecting with these guys and getting them to buy into style of play. And look, it's been a rocky last 2 years with, the trade of OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, and kind of just going into a whole rebuilding mode. And now coming out of it, in your third year as a coach, normally that's the defining year where people want to have an idea of what your talent is and what your capability is in terms of being able to stretch the thing out and really get the job done. So to me, I'm super impressed with the connectivity that this group has, the belief they have in each other, in the style of plays that they're running, and there's a good chemistry going right now. So I'm really, really impressed with that. And a lot of that comes from just, giving all these young guys a lot of minutes in the last few years. And now, you're seeing some dividends paid there. You had a high-level talent like Brandon Ingram, and things change a lot. One guy in this league, and in this sport in particular, more than maybe any other sport, can change things dramatically.
Would you say Ingram's biggest contribution, and I know there are many, but the biggest contribution is his ability deep in the shot clock to go out and create a good shot as the clock's winding down? Because the Raptors really have not had that guy over the last few seasons.
Yeah, no, he makes a big difference. He's just such a talented player, and he can get his shot off on pretty much anybody. He's got tremendous size. You try to contest his shot, and he just raises up above that and gets a clean look at the basket. So he's been a great get for them in terms of what they're trying to do. They can run a lot of stuff through him. He gets a lot of attention, meanwhile, and that opens up so much for his teammates. So when you have a high-end talent like that, everyone becomes better.
Now, with Ingram being part of a team where he's relied on, certainly in many respects, but he's not relied on exclusively. The play of R.J. Barrett, for instance, thus far, R.J. seems to be really maturing into a leader in his own right, kind of as a vocal leader. Scotty Barnes, again, casual observer, kind of a quieter leader. Are those fair observations, Jack, of how this team is coming together as a unit with that kind of with those different styles of leaders on the court right now?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'll get one guy that I would say has really impressed me with his leadership is Jamal Shedd. He is a traditional old school point guard who was coached really hard in college by Kelvin Sampson. He is a no nonsense. He brings it every night, and yet he has a great, fun-loving personality and charismatic way about him that teammates just light up and connect with him on. So he's really impressed me with his leadership. Brandon Ingram, more of a quiet leader. I would say, you look at a guy like Scotty Barnes, I think he's become a lot more vocal here in the last 2 years from what I've seen in his time here. And, a guy like Quickly now is starting to establish himself in the last few games. He's had a really good road trip, and I think his confidence level has allowed him now to be a little bit more vocal. R.J. Barrett is the guy competes hard every night, and he's had a few tough nights in a row here on the road against the Nets and the Cavs. But nonetheless, overall, if you look at things in totality of the 12-game season so far, I think he's played really well for them. So I'm hoping that, he'll bounce back tonight here against the Pacers.
It's interesting, Jack, to see this lineup come into its own with great coaching, the kind of chemistry that you're describing, the talent of Ingram, which was, on the shelf last year. Nobody had a chance to watch him because of his recovery from his injury. You really had a vision that was put forward that required patience. And I think the fan base, for the most part, I'd say the danger was that people would stop caring. But it seems like people are starting to care again about the Raptors as they see this team come into its own and have impressive wins after a 1-4 start, but to have impressive wins, including the beatdown of the Cleveland Cavaliers the other night.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the other night was the most impressive win of the season because you're playing a good team, and obviously, a big part of that is, you're playing a team on a back-to-back coming in from Miami the night before, so that's not an easy. But you got to take advantage of the schedule. And Mobley and Mitchell didn't play the night before. They rested them up to get ready for the Raptor game. So overall, I just thought the Raptors brought great energy and intensity and purpose and great ball movement and really just played with a lot of juice. So that really jumped off the page at me. So, no, it's exciting that they're, and look, there's been, the last few years, the Raptors, I wouldn't say become irrelevant, but there's been a lot of just malaise and over this team the last few years where there hasn't been a lot to latch on to. And I think now fans are starting to come back. And I used the term the other night. This group's, Pat Riley has a great term. He goes, it's called the innocent climb. And when expectations are reasonable and, you're able to begin that little climb where you start to improve and start to show growth. And I think they're at the beginning stages of that innocent climb where, they're not burdened by the expectation of, you have to win a title, or you got to win 50 games, or, you got to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think any of those things are attached to this group right now. I think the expectation is you want to see improvement and growth. And when you have that and you can fulfill that, that's a lot of fun.
And the fact that people are having fun watching, talking about, getting enthused about the Raptors is a great first step. But also, Jack, the organization has gone through some changes as well. What was, in your opinion, and not naming names and certainly not trying to take a shot at anybody, but once in a while, and you know this, you've been in the coaching world, you've been in the basketball world your entire life. Once in a while, organizations, teams need to get shaken up, don't they, in order to move forward? They get into a pattern that they don't seem to be able to get out of that, to get out of. And I think it's fair to say from the outside looking in, that's where the Raptors were. And so they've gone about making some significant front office adjustments. And is that part and parcel of this also change on the court as well?
Well, I think in any case, when you don't make the playoffs 4 out of 5 years, there's going to be shakeup.
Yes.
And then when you have ownership changing, Rodgers buying Bell's share out, and then now coming this spring, the transaction that will take place between Rodgers and Larry Tannenbaum, and Rodgers being, at that point, the sole owner, there's a change in philosophy too, and so that's normal. It's going to happen. People are going to bring their own people in, or they're going to change the look of certain things. So, to me, that happens every day in business and it happens every day in sports. Masai Ujiri had a great run, did a terrific job, and I fully expect next season or maybe the season after, whenever he decides, that he'll be back in the sports business at a very high level because he's an incredibly talented executive. So, and I'm happy for Bobby Webster because it's a great opportunity for him. And the team is in a position to show growth. So hopefully for his sake, that helps his future and has an opportunity to lead this thing long term.
Well, and it's exciting, too, and I'm talking to Jack Armstrong, the longtime play-by-play voice of the Toronto Raptors here on Hoop City with Paul Sir on Sports 1440. Jack, it's exciting to see this Raptors team, have this surge. I think a lot of people thought they're 1-4. Oh, here we go again. Of course, it's early in the season. Let's give it time. But the way they have systematically started rattling off wins with contributions coming from three guys that were all averaging around 20 points a game, Ingram, Barnes, and RJ for a while. RJ's had a little bit of a drop now. Quickly is emerging, and I think a lot of people, that was one of the eyebrow-raising contracts that were signed was with Quickly. I've like, man, oh man, is he that good? Is he good enough to merit these kind of dollars? When are we going to start seeing what the Raptors saw in him, and we are at this point now. It is, from a broadcasting standpoint, I think this is where I'd like to go with it. It must be fun now to be broadcasting for a team that's actually healthy and not having all of these players on the sideline wondering what they're going to be like when they actually get into the rotation.
Yeah, well, that's always the challenge. You don't know really what it's going to look like till you put everybody together and you kind of work out roles and all that. And I think so often, I just think it just comes down to fit and having the right guys on the floor together and being able to play off of each other. And sometimes when it's disjointed and you're being asked to do a little too much, I think it has an impact on what you can do personally as a player. So I think they're working through those things and getting mixing and matching personnel better in order to get the right combinations where now you can shine, and we're seeing that more with him.
Jakob Poeltl. Atypical big man in the NBA now. Jakob would be very reluctant ever to take a three-point shot. But marvelous hands around the basket, very good defender. What do you think Poeltl brings to this team? If you had to pick one quality to what Poeltl brings to this team, what would that be, Jack?
No doubt. Stability, maturity. I just think he's just very consistent. He's your classic steady Eddie guy where he's going to be overwhelmingly in the right places at the right time to do the things you need done. I mean, geez, he had 6 screen assists the other night in their offense. I mean, the guy just gets other people opportunities, and he had 20 points along with that. Isn't it funny when you set good screens, you end up getting a lot of great opportunities for yourself?
When did that happen, Jack?
Yeah. But he so to me, I just think there's a reliability, trustworthiness, whatever way you want to say it, just on both ends. That he's gonna be there, and he's kind of low maintenance. You don't have to run any plays for him. He's kind of like your fifth guy out there, but he does a really good job of it, and he's a professional.
Grady Dick, there's rumblings of people being dissatisfied about Grady's development. He's in his 3rd year, I believe. What's your summary right now? Is it just a question for Grady to get the right opportunities at the right time? Do you see the work ethic? Do you see the intangibles? Do you see the attitude, the determination in Grady that he will eventually, he will figure it out and become more and more of a consistent contributor for this team?
I don't know. I some nights I see him, being there and ready in his 3rd year, and then other nights it doesn't seem like he can get his game off. Here's the big difference. Some of the expectations were based upon him playing on bad teams the last 2 years and getting an opportunity to have a lot more runway to play through mistakes and also a higher usage. Now, the usage is way, way down because he's like the 5th guy on the court now, 4th guy. And so some of the expectations for him are not realistic because I think when he was drafted, I don't think anyone thought that he would be one of the top 3 guys on the floor for a team. You thought he'd be that 4th or 5th guy on the court who's more complementary to the other top guys. So I think there has to be an adjustment in terms of how people value him and rate him. So I think that, and it's a big adjustment for him because now you feel like you need to hit a grand slam when there's nobody on base. You try to maybe do a little too much. And there's been times I've watched him where he's trying to make plays as if he's the guy. Well, maybe you were the guy when the team wasn't good, but your role is different now. There's a lot of other guys that are the guy, and you got to play off of them. And you got to be just more of a complimentary piece. And then when your moments come to shine, go ahead and shine. So I think it's a bit of an adjustment for him. I'll tell you another guy. I mean, look at R.J. Barrett, played really well the first 10 games of the year. He's really struggled the last 2, and now you're starting to see them going small and playing shed and quickly together. So guess what? That cuts into your time and your touches. So now you can't go out there and press and try to get it all on one play. You got to trust and have belief that over time and with different combinations of guys, you'll get yours. So that's always the true challenge of for any player and for coaches, and that's why chemistry is so hard to create because guys also have personal pride and they want to play at a very high level and do great things personally and put up big numbers and make a lot of money. And there's a lot of people in their ears telling them that they need to shoot more and do this and do that. So there's always that challenge.
Boy, Jack, you just did a phenomenal job, I think, of encapsulating the human realities of being a basketball player. I really believe that. Like in Grady's case, Grady being a quote-unquote a shooter, one of the hardest jobs is to be the 4th or 5th option and be a shooter, where you're the release valve. You're not the go-to guy. You're the guy that's got to find the spot, like you said, to play off others. And then when you get the shot, knock it down. But you may only get 3 to 5 shots a game. That's tough.
And that's pressure. And you can't really establish the rhythm when you've been a guy like Grady, who's a terrific grade school, high school, college, and had the opportunity to have more volume and more touches in his first few years, even though the team wasn't winning. Now you have to move down a peg or two. And as much as it's really hard to move up a peg or two, and most guys can't do it, to move down a peg or two is humble as well. And you're right. But the fact that you might only take 3 to 5 shots, but you're in that left corner, and they're out there hugging you, guarding you, because your threat to shoot, suddenly your offense still functions better. And I'm not a crazy plus-minus guy. He does have the best plus-minus on the team. And I think a big reason why is that you got to guard him. And when you got to guard him, it becomes easier basketball for the other 4 guys. So even though the fan is going to look and say, well, he's only scoring X, Y, Z and only shooting this and yada, 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 there's so many variables in place that impact statistics, but in some ways they're not going to impact yours. They're going to impact others more.
Absolutely right. And the goal of the team is to win, and the goal of the team is to find the best ways to win. And that might be in certain situations at your expense in your usage and your shot attempts, all of those things. But the net result, like you said, can still be positive for the team, and you're still contributing. So the key and always the challenge is, because like you said, Jack, everybody's got voices in their ears and their own personal expectations. The key is to stay ready, to stay sharp, and to always be pushing yourself, not just when you're on the court, but when people aren't looking as well, because from your playing and coaching days, it's the guys that are the best players are the guys that are doing the work when nobody's looking.
Yeah, well, that's professionalism, and that's what did Muhammad Ali say? He goes, I won all my fights running on a dark, deserted road at 5 a.m. while my opponent was in bed. And it's paying the price and doing the little things and having winning habits, and it all works itself out. It's a long season. Everyone gets their chance, and everyone has an opportunity to show what they can do. And also, you gotta be humble enough to say, well, this is something that's not in my repertoire as one of my top 3 things that I bring. So I got to stay away from that, and I got to play the things that I do well and stay away from the things that I don't, and do the things that the team needs. And it's just, again, we're in such a focused time on statistics, and so people. It's funny. A lot of the articles I read about basketball are so statistically written now. Like all I have to do is just have some numbers in front of me, and I can write any article I want and make my point, because I can just bend and move the stats around to create my story. But it's the old line: basketball is like church; many attend, few understand. And so when I read some of the, and I'm not just talking basketball, I'm talking baseball and football and hockey and soccer or whatever. It's only telling you part of the story. There's so many other elements that go into it that, if you're just watching it through the lens of an analytical, statistical viewpoint, I think sometimes you're doing yourself and you're doing the team and the player and a coach a disservice.
You're listening to Hoop City with Paul Serd. We're in the deep dive with Jack Armstrong, longtime color analyst for the Toronto Raptors. Jack, I want to keep that thought going just a little bit further. I think what you're describing is so pertinent because, like you said, you can manipulate statistics, and artificial intelligence has made the manipulation even more, I think, profound. But what you're touching on is the soul of the team. I mean, what I like about a trend that I think is happening in the NBA right now is I think there's a little bit more soul in the league coming back, instead of just being copycat organizations in terms of style of play. They're actually trying to build that elusive culture within organizations. They're trying to compose teams differently than they did a few years ago, where you just went out and tried to buy wins by paying superstar players increasing amounts of money. But now I think the NBA has done some smart things with their first and second aprons that makes it harder and harder to construct teams like that. But I think teams are finding their way back to the playing the basketball in a variety of ways that supersede the overemphasis on analytics. Fair statement?
Yeah, very fair. And to your point about the first and second apron, I think it forces people's hand that you're going to have an imperfect team, and you kind of have to navigate your way around that. What is victory favors the team making the fewest mistakes, right? So,
right.
You got to find ways to, again, play to the things that you can do and try to camouflage the things you can't. And I don't care whether you're a big market or a small market, the numbers are the numbers in terms of salary available at the cap, at the first apron, at the second apron, and what those numbers look like. You look at the Cleveland Cavs; they're the only team in the NBA right now in the second apron. If they don't get to the NBA Finals this year, if they don't win it, the Cavs that you're looking at right now, and to their credit, they've had a lot of injuries right now.
Right.
And I think they're taking the big picture in terms of how they're putting their team together. and not as crazy about the regular season. They want to make sure they have a healthy team going into the postseason because they don't want to flame out again like they did a year ago. But if they don't win the whole thing, and maybe even if they do, they'll probably look significantly different next year because a market size like Cleveland can't handle that bill. And I think even at Oklahoma City, their window's going to be there for a little bit. And then they're going to have to, look down the barrel of the gun and make decisions in terms of what they're going to do. What they've done, though, is they've stockpiled so many picks. And, so they can do a lot of creative things in the future because they haven't mortgaged their future. They've actually created a future. So back to your point earlier about Oklahoma City, Sam Presti and his staff have done a really good job kind of being ahead of that curve a little bit. So that's super important, particularly when you're a small market. And, again, you can't buy your way out of mistakes in a small market. And, honestly, based upon the first and second apron now, you could be a big market. You better be careful trying to buy your way out of it because you might not ever.
Well, look at the Boston Celtics. I think they're a great example of, at the offseason this year, of course, Tatum's injury exacerbated or accelerated the process, but they were looking at a way to dump salaries this year to try to get under the second and first aprons because they had done just as you described. They had purchased their future, mortgaged their future based on winning championships. And when that didn't work out, the injury bug, Oklahoma City is no different than anybody else. They're one injury away from being a very different team. And so I think your points are extremely well taken. And now it has leveled the playing field that even a market like L.A. can't just buy its way out, can't superstar its way out anymore because the financial constraints really have leveled the playing field, which I think is a great move for the NBA. And even though a lot of people want to see the final be between Boston and L.A., the fact that it is OKC and Indiana, from a league standpoint, that's really kind of the point, isn't it? That you want to get the league to that situation where any team, no matter what the market size, could be an NBA champion.
Well, look, we've had, 7 straight years with a different NBA champion. That's super cool. I like that. I think that's good. I do, it's funny. It's a sore subject, but, heartbreaking when the Jays lost to the Dodgers. In my opinion, I'm a huge baseball fan. They need a cap. Now, the Players 100%. Union has the Baseball Players Union has done a phenomenal job over the years, starting with Marvin Miller way back. And they have outflanked the owners time and time again. And they have a great union. And they have fought it and done a phenomenal job with that. But I do think, you look at certain markets, it's an absolute joke what's going on in certain markets in their sport. And as much as the Jays were that, plucky underdog, great story, the Jays had the 5th highest payroll in baseball. And their challenge is, they're taking in, 72, 73 cents on the U.S. dollar, in terms of the conversion on the Canadian dollar and U.S. dollar. So that's a big commitment that, Edward Rogers made to winning, which I'm super impressed with. But it's a challenge in all sports of being able to get, significant bang for your buck. And and particularly when you're limited in terms of what you can do. I mean, look, Maple Leaf Sports owns the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. If there was no salary cap in hockey, I have no doubt in my mind. I mean, the Leafs are beyond desperate to win a cup. I totally believe they'd spend another $100 million if they could. They do whatever it would take to win a cup. But it's a different system, and quite frankly, in some cases, that different system helps teams that can get guys to play for a little less because they have no state income tax. Here we are, the NBA. There's always been this rumor about are we going to have expansion at some point? Well, I would imagine the two cities that have constantly been mentioned are Seattle, which I think would be great to have a team back there, and Vegas. Well, by the way, both of those states don't have state income tax. So now you're adding two more teams that are going to have already a distinct recruiting and retention advantage over a number of the other teams. So there's a lot of moving parts beyond just what the cap is and what your floor is, what your tax bill could be, whatever the case may be. There's so many variables in place.
And I love the way you're framing it, Jack, from the standpoint of the business of sport and the sport itself on the court, the field, whatever the venue is. They're really strange bedfellows, and it's oftentimes it's the square. Who can fit the square peg into the round hole most effectively in order to create the team that can perform on the perform in their chosen venue and be the most successful. And in the case of the LA Dodgers, it says, hey, let's just spend a lot more money in this case. And the Jays spent a lot of money, but boy, did it create an atmosphere that we haven't had, 30 plus years in baseball, but even with the Raptors win in 2019, it was marvelous for the nation in a very special moment. Now they get back to the reality of business.
No, and it's interesting. I think when you look at go back to the NBA, we chatted about the Celtics. They did win a title, so they did accomplish their goal. They did play a ton of big games. They sold tickets, they sold merchandise, yada yada yada, all that stuff. So that was successful. But I guess my point is now it's gonna be really, really hard to sustain over a long period of time, and you got to hit on your secondary guys. You got to hit on picks. You got to hit on guys that are acquired, playing at a smaller number, and to me, I think that is critical to your success. And you got to turn your roster over. And when guys are about to make more money, and you got to make a decision in terms of maybe I can't afford this luxury anymore. Is this guy a luxury or a necessity? Can I get the exact same thing that he's giving me for half the amount of money? And I think that's the true challenge now in terms of how you handle building teams and handle the cap.
Jack, final question. Our poll question for the day today is who early in the season would you pick as the MVP? And our four choices are, no surprise, Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and Luka Doncic. Who would you pick?
I would say Jokic, to me right now, is playing out of his mind.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Like it's other level at so many different levels.
Yeah, no, he's just a remarkable talent. I will say though that in terms of who's doing the heaviest lifting, I would say it would have to be Giannis. I look at his supporting cast where he is. I think he's doing the heaviest lifting of the four. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jokic really have exceptional talent around them. I would say the second guy that's probably doing the heaviest lifting would be Luka, because the LeBron hasn't played, and as good as the Lakers are, he makes them go, he makes them hum, and obviously Austin Reeves has had a great year for them, and their coaching staff's done a really good job with their club. So. But if I had to pick one, I would say Jokic right now. But all four are worthy, and it should be a really, really cool discussion. And you didn't ask me the question, but I was asked the question the other day on a show, like, what is your biggest surprise? And I would definitely have to say the Detroit Pistons.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
They're having a great year. And if you think 2 years ago, they were the absolute laughing stock of the NBA, a complete gong show. They gave Monty Williams a king's ransom to coach, and then after a year he was gone. And they have been a great story in the league. And I think they had 4 of their top guys out of the lineup last night, and still found a way to win the game against the Sixers. So I think they're probably the best story, best surprise so far in the league.
Jack, we could go another 40 minutes. I've got about 10 questions that just popped to mind that I'd love to ask you about. But I am so grateful for your time today. You've been very, very generous. Thanks so much, Jack. I look forward to doing this again real soon.
You got it, Paul. All the best. Thank you.